So you're walking down the street one day, then bang, you get shot. You don't have the luxury of knowing where the bullet came from or who shot you. You just die instantly. So you get a funeral, a nice little casket, and all these people from your life show up. I mean, the food they brought for the wake is atrocious, nothing you'd like. Those nasty hors d'oeuvres or whatever you call them. But still, there are some people there that are relevant in your life. But then there's this one guy in the crowd, this weirdo, and he's giving off strange vibes. Wearing a toga, got a pretty bushy beard, and he wrote a little eulogy for you. Hey guys, my name is Aristotle, and we're gathered here today to talk about the life of insert name here. Now, insert name here was, in my opinion, a virtuous person. What is a virtuous person, you may ask? Well, allow me to hijack this entire funeral to explain it to you. Hello and welcome to Amygdala Vids, the channel best enjoyed at 2 a.m. with a cup of green tea. Today we're going to be introducing Aristotle's thoughts on virtue, which is the third piece of this little Aristotle series that we've been going through. Just to quickly recap, in our first video we established that eudaimonia, which can be translated as happiness or living well, is the ultimate end of all human action. Next, we gave some reasons as to why doing virtuous action can help us achieve that end of living well. And in this video we'll talk about what it even means to do virtuous actions. And like the last two videos, I'll be using this highly accessible Terence Irwin translation, and the link to the book will be in the description. So what even is this virtue thing? Well, the Greek translation for virtue is this term arete, which I'm 99% sure I did not pronounce correctly. And virtue refers to a state or characteristic of something that helps a thing perform its function. For example, the durability of a biking helmet helps the helmet perform the function of protecting your head. Now for humans, we got a bunch of virtues, and Aristotle lists quite a bit here in the book. And these virtues can be divided into virtues of thought and virtues of character. For some, virtues are called virtues of thought, others virtues of character. Wisdom, comprehension, and prudence are called virtues of thought. Generosity and temperance, virtues of character. This video is mainly going to be focused on these virtues of character, as we may tackle virtues of thought later. So I mean, we all want a good character, right? And a good character consists of different characteristics or virtues. I mean, we all got some people we look up to, or at least respect. And we could probably think of some character traits they have which we perceive as good. But putting aside what these traits and virtues are for now, how does one actually acquire these virtues? At what point do you consider someone to be brave or generous? Aristotle believes that the power of habit and doing something over and over again allows one to acquire these virtues of character. Virtue of character result from habit. Hence, it is also clear that none of the virtues of character arise in us naturally. So these virtues of character are dependent on actual action and habituation. And this makes sense. I mean, just saying you're generous doesn't make you generous. No one is born generous, no one is born naturally with any of these virtues. We have to earn them in a sense and continually hold on to them. I mean, would you really call your friend generous if the only time he gave money away was like 6 years ago? Wouldn't they have to continuously and habitually be giving money away to be considered generous? And so the virtues arise in us neither by nature nor against nature. Rather, we are by nature able to acquire them, and we are completed through habit. Similarly then, we can become just by doing just actions, temperate by doing temperate actions, brave by doing brave actions. Alright, so we've established that by doing virtuous actions and making them a habit, you could acquire these virtues of character. Act bravely over and over again and you'll become brave. But here's a question. So you go in for a flu shot, and I mean, you're an adult, this is no big deal. Sure, it hurts a bit, but I mean, come on, this is an easy act of bravery on your part, right? So you get your shot, then the lights go out. Instead of a flu shot, you've been put to sleep, and the doctors are performing risky, terrifying surgeries on you. Straight out of the TV show Hannibal. But you survive and wake up, find out what happened, and pat yourself on the back for being so brave. Something's wrong here, right? Well, Aristotle says that the person has to be in the right state to actually do these virtuous actions, and that depends on 3 important requirements. First, he must know that he is doing them. Secondly, he must decide on them, and decide on them for themselves. And third, he must also do them from a firm and unchanging state. Seems pretty straightforward as to why those requirements are important. I mean, if someone mind controlled you to kill someone or did one of those Winter Soldier things, you can't really be 100% responsible for those actions. So the same would apply for virtuous actions as well. Alright, so we get these virtues of character through forming habits of virtuous actions that correspond to those 3 requirements. Let's now introduce the general idea of what these virtues are. So some people refer to this as the golden mean idea, but I didn't actually see Aristotle call it that in the book, so screw it. If those people can call it the golden mean, then I'm calling it the magical mean, because it sounds cooler. So what is the mean? And no, I don't want the math definition. I'm done with that stuff, and the algebra teachers lied when they said I'd use it in the real world. For Aristotle, the mean is a sort of in-between between an excess and a deficiency. So think of it like this. You roll up to McDonald's and order yourself one of those $1 drinks. Not paying at all would be a deficiency. Paying $2 would be an excess, but paying $1 would be the mean. Now what does this all mean, no pun intended? Aristotle believes that this can apply to feelings and actions. By virtue, I mean virtue of character, for this is about feelings and actions, and these admit of excess, deficiency, and an intermediate condition. So let's take bravery for example, a classic virtue of character. Aristotle is saying you could be excessively brave and deficiently brave. Not to give too much away for the next video, but a deficiency in bravery is cowardliness. Pretty straightforward. Now what's interesting though is you could go too far in the other direction, and be rash as Aristotle calls it. You know, the person who has no fear and does unnecessarily dangerous things? So both the excess, rashness, and the deficiency, cowardliness, are vices, and the virtue is the mean, bravery, which is in the middle. Virtue then is a state that decides, consisting in a mean, the mean relative to us, which is defined by reference to reason. That is to say, to the reason by reference to which the prudent person would define it. It is a mean between 2 vices, one of excess and one of deficiency. Did you catch that mention of relativity? You see, unlike Plato, Mr. Universals, Aristotle is going to recognize the importance of context. You see, you can't just lock yourself in a room, think about the magical mean between deficiencies, then know exactly how to act all the time. The mean is going to be pretty dependent on the specific situation. But having these feelings at the right times, about the right things, towards the right people, for the right end, and in the right way, is the intermediate and best condition, and this is proper to virtue. So calmness is one of these virtues of character. And the excess of calmness is to be easily angered, or irascibility as Aristotle calls it. And the deficiency is ineradicability. Someone who just accepts insults, the pushover, as we may call them today. Now someone accidentally bumping into you is very different than someone who murders your entire family. So obviously we can't just determine one mean of calmness here. Maybe the calm thing to do in the bumping situation is to say excuse me, with the deficient thing to be ignoring it and the excessive thing to beating the shit out of the other person. Now why the heck would it be reasonable to do the calm thing in the bumping situation and say excuse me when someone murders your entire family? Just doesn't make a lot of sense. So remember, just be context sensitive. Now you may be thinking, well gee whiz, sounds like it'd be pretty difficult to determine the mean in all these situations. And Aristotle isn't a fool, except according to this guy, he recognizes the difficulty with hitting this mean, which is why he gives some general advice to do so. That is why anyone who aims at the intermediate condition must first of all steer clear of the more contrary extreme. So remember bravery, how being rash is the excess and being cowardly is the deficiency? Aristotle's like, look, being rash is less contrary to bravery than cowardliness. In other words, rashness is more like bravery than cowardliness. Sure, it's an excess and not the ideal mean of bravery, but it's closer to bravery than cowardliness. Therefore, first try to move away from cowardliness. And not to worry, all the virtues have either an excess or deficiency that is better than the other. So after doing this, Aristotle asks us to consider where we naturally seem to want to go. We must also examine what we ourselves drift into easily. We must drag ourselves off in the contrary direction. For if we pull far away from error, as they do in straightening bent wood, we shall reach the intermediate condition. This makes me think of gut reactions. Like, you know when someone insults you and you have this feeling of wanting to throw fists, but you don't actually do it? It's like that. Those thoughts that result from initial emotions that we don't act on. Maybe steer clear of that. Finally, just recognize the role that pleasure plays in all this. Aristotle doesn't talk too much about this, but I guess it's just a thing to consider. What actions would bring initial pleasure and why? And could our perceived pleasures be misguiding us? Now you might have just heard all that and think to yourself, man, I mean, thanks Aristotle? Nice list of tips you got there for hitting the mean, but come on. You don't expect me to be perfect on this, especially with your vague advice. Well, thankfully, Aristotle does not expect you to be perfect about directly hitting the mean. Still, we are not blamed if we deviate a little in excess or deficiency from doing well, but only if we deviate a long way, since then we are easily noticed. But how great and how serious a deviation receives blame is not easy to define in an account, for nothing else perceptible is easily defined either. Such things are among particulars, and the judgment depends on perception. So Aristotle's like, yo, don't sweat it if you're a little off. It's only cause for concern if you're really off. And even that's hard to determine because we here at Aristotle Incorporated recognize the importance of context. It's like shooting at a target. Hitting around the bullseye is fine. Missing the target entirely and hitting the wall is something else. Now we could end the video here, and if you gotta leave, that's fine. But it might be helpful to do a little hypothetical to really get this all down. So let's say that there's a person you're attracted to that you just see sitting alone in a coffee shop. You want to say hi, but you're feeling nervous. Then you remember Aristotle and how bravery is the mean between being rash and being cowardly. You think about what the brave action would be here. Well, perhaps the cowardly thing would be to just not do anything at all, staying safe at your table alone, free from social interaction. Maybe the rash thing would be to run up to them with no plan and just let words fall out of your mouth spontaneously, no thought beforehand. The mean is going to be somewhere in the middle. Well, we should probably steer away from the more contrary extreme, in this case the cowardly option. So let's make sure we don't just sit here doing nothing. And we have that natural tendency to just sit here and do nothing, so that's further reason to not do that. You can't really make an assessment on pleasure, but you know it'd be a big feat to at least go up to them and talk to them regardless of the outcome. You might be proud of that. With all this in mind, maybe the mean is to first sit here and plan out what to say, and then actually go up and talk to them. And there you have it. That's a hypothetical virtuous act. And that's also the end of our introduction to virtue. Our next Aristotle video will actually dive into specific virtues like bravery, but I might also switch it up and upload some in-between content as well. If you want to be notified for when those videos drop, hit the subscribe and the bell button. Also, if you got any value out of this video, feel free to hit the like button and share it around just completely out of context with someone you haven't spoken to in a while. Comment below any thoughts on the video or your favorite flavor of goldfish, and I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.